Coming to paperback and e-readers, Isis Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Isis Dark Incubus at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. Before I take Scarlet Steel to the barbecue, I wanted to give everybody an update on the SJS Direct 2024 catalog and give everybody an update on the future of the next SJS Direct comic. Now, the SJS Direct Spring 2024 catalog is available for pre-order on Amazon's Kindle, and it's also available for pre-order on other digital platforms if you want a digital version that you can read on your phone or your tablet. And the three books of the SJS Direct 2024 catalog, John Haynes' Illuminati, Isis Dark Incubus, and A Steam Horror in the Hamptons, are now available on Kindle for pre-order, and they are also going to be available for pre-order on Draft to Digital and Google Play, and you can pre-order your copies, which will be dropped to your devices, with John Haynes' Illuminati dropping on March 22nd to all digital devices, Isis Dark Incubus dropping to all digital devices on April 26th, and A Steam Horror in the Hamptons dropping to all digital devices on May 24th. Now, all of these books have been completed and basically edited and ready to go, uploaded to KDP and the other digital platforms like Google Play and Draft to Digital, and they'll be available for worldwide distribution right now on those digital platforms and coming to paperback on Amazon.com in March 22nd for John Haynes' Illuminati, April 26th for Isis Dark Incubus, and May 24th for A Steam Horror in the Hamptons. I tried to tier out all of these releases so that people's wallets could get a break, and I do that because I know that people work hard for their money, and I want to make sure that you guys can be able to afford to pick up these books and be able to pick them up over a course of time instead of having to buy all of them all at one time. So all those books are ready to go, and if you want to put it in your pre-orders for the digital versions, you can do that right now by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to wait for the paperback versions, they'll be coming out starting on March 22nd. Now, the next SJS Direct comic I want to do is one that features Isis, the goddess next door, and I've got two scripts already written. I've gotten the All That Glitter script that I've had since 2018, and I've got the Beauty Myth script, which I just finished last year, and I really want to get a comic out featuring the goddess next door now that I've done A Steam No Good Deed, which is available on Amazon's Kindle for 99 cents right now, and in the back of the E-Steam Blast from the Past book. And I did John Haynes' Death's Door in 2022, and I'm eager to go out and do a second comic, but the only thing holding me back from doing that second comic with the goddess next door is funds to be able to produce that comic, because I want to be able to have all the funds together to make sure I can pay my artist on time. I don't want to do any of those stupid profit sharing schemes, because for me, the artist needs to be paid up front because the sales are my department, but the whole thing is I need to start raising those funds, and I can only do that with your help. So if you guys could head over to the PayPal or the Cash App, that would help a lot in helping me get the next SJS Direct comic out, and all donations would be greatly appreciated because I've been saving up a lot of the PayPal and Cash App donations to get that next comic out. Now, as I've been saving up those funds to get the next comic out, I do spend money here and there on comics that I like from independent comic creators to help them with their Kickstarters and help them with their Indiegogos. And I wasn't really too happy about having to pick up this issue of Scarlet Steel. This whole promotion plan that 426 Outpost had for this comic really tarnished the entire brand of this comic, because I felt it was kind of sleazy to try to get people to buy this comic after the release of Mighty Might number 2. Now, after the release of Mighty Might number 2, the battle between Mighty Might and Horus builds up to a confrontation where Mighty Might gets overwhelmed, and she has to get help from Scarlet Steel towards the conclusion of the book. And in order for us to finish the story, we have to go out and buy a copy of Scarlet Steel number 1. And that whole crossover plan was one that I believe was poorly executed, and it really soured my taste for picking up this book. And it soured my taste because this was seeming like a coerced crossover. And back in the days of comics, yes, you would have crossovers like this as related to trying to sell more poorly selling books, but this one was done to try to launch a new book, and it really left a sour taste in my mouth because in this day of independent comics cost anywhere between $5 and $20 these days, and that's a lot of money for an independent comic. And it really isn't a good thing to do as related to a brand new character in a book, because it leads to a very poor first impression of that character that we have to go out and buy a new book to see them and finish the story of a previous character. So I wasn't too happy about this whole execution of this concept. And after reading Scarlet Steel number 1 and seeing the tarnished marketing plan for this book turned from tarnished to rust due to not only the poor marketing plan, but due to the poor execution of this story, which basically falls apart from what the action in Mighty Might number 2 on the first page. Now, with the first page, we get Scarlet Steel stepping into action, but sadly we don't really get to know much about Scarlet Steel as related to her powers and her personality. No, it just doesn't really work as related to this comic due to them trying to cross both of these characters over. And as they try to cross both of these characters over, it's hard to really care about these characters because you're already miffed about having to go out here and spend more money on another crowdfunded comic, and as you're spending the money, you're not really getting the quality as related to this book. Now, the Scarlet Steel character just comes in to this book with this battle between Mighty Might and Horus, and sadly, this version of Horus that is written for Outpost 426 is not a really good adaptation of the character, and really shows how the writers really didn't do their research on the Horus character. And that's shown with Scarlet Steel when she comes down with this to talk to the Mighty Might as they're bantering about Horus as he's going on in his monologue. And she says that, "Oh, I don't think Horus is over Isis." And that really showed me that the writers here didn't do their research. Now, Scarlet Steel says she dated Horus for a while, sort of citing that she's some sort of immortal or something like that. But Horus wouldn't be dating anyone because Horus, again, would not be dating Isis because Isis is his mother. Moreover, Horus was married to Hathor, the goddess of love, which is similar to Aphrodite, and Horus, as he was married to Hathor, had 4 children. So if these writers had actually taken the time to do their research on Egyptian mythology, they wouldn't have made Horus a villain because, according to Egyptian mythology, Horus is a hero, and he is considered to be the second person to be a part of the line of pharaohs in Heliopolis. And this basically makes the Horus character into some sort of villain, and it's not a good look for the writers because it shows that they didn't do their research. And sadly, as they didn't do their research, they didn't really do a good job of structuring this whole story between this battle that was supposed to continue with the Mighty Might and Scarlet Steel. And that really shows with the kind of action that goes on with this comic. Just really, it comes across as really awkward and uneven. And I'm not really a fan of a lot of these references to Gen X material. Like they talk about the X-Men and the Fastball special. And I'm sitting there going, why are you referencing a mainstream concept in your comic? This is your indie comic. This is your opportunity to leave a good first impression on the readers, and you're mentioning stuff from another comic, and that really devalues your comic as related to us answering the critical question that every writer has to answer: why should we care? I mean, I want to see how Scarlet Steel can handle herself in battle, and you're mentioning the X-Men as related to the buckle on his belt. I mean, you don't mention other people's characters. No, this is your chance to showcase what's great about yours in your comic. And I'm not really seeing Scarlet Steel being a strong center focus. I mean, there's nothing really special about her. She's coming across like a sort of Section 8 Supergirl, and that's basically one of the problems with Scarlet Steel, is that she doesn't really stand out as distinct. And this gets even worse as the art goes on, because I'm asking a critical question as Scarlet Steel holds up Mite, because in Mite's book we don't get to see no butt cheeks and no teabag costumes. No, in Mite's book, C.B. Zane keeps everything about PG to PG-13 and makes that book very appealing because it feels like an all-ages book. But in Scarlet Steel, it's basically feeling like a Penthouse comic with all of the teabags as related to these costumes. And while I like to look at a good backside, I don't really want it thrown up in my face gratuitously. And I want to see something done with a little taste, because I don't mind writing a couple of cheesecake scenes in many of my books, like those in the Isis or Esteem series, or even in some of the Spinsterella books or Eternal Night. I don't mind putting a little cheesecake in there for the fellas and some of the ladies. But I got a problem when they make it really gratuitous like this. I mean, we're only, 4 or 5 pages into the book, and we get all this teabag action, and most women wouldn't want to have their butts out if they're out here fighting the bad guys. So this was not a good look overall for this whole part of the story, which basically for a crossover falls completely apart, and the whole Horus situation just ends on an anticlimactic note. And after it ends on an anticlimactic note, we get some exposition about the government agency that Mite and Scarlet Steel work for, looking to clean up everything. And as they look to clean up everything, they start talking about old comics. Again, a Gen X reference. People from Gen X, yes, we can understand what those references are, but the rest of the world doesn't understand what those references are. And we also have these heroes basically revealing their secret identity on the ground. That's something that should have been saved for another book. And we've got Scarlet calling Mighty Mite Mighty instead of calling her Mite. I mean, clearly the writing here really wasn't thought about. This book needed another round of edits, and it really needs a round of edits to get rid of a lot of the Gen X references, because the rest of the world doesn't understand what these things mean. I mean, as a Gen Xer myself, I understand what a lot of the things that they're talking about, but I understand that when I write a story, I'm writing for an audience of people from different generations. I know that there are some boomers out there who buy comics. I know that there are some millennials who buy comics, and Gen Z, and Generation Alpha, and I need to write it in a very general way that everybody can understand what's going on without having to do a Google search for the entire book. So I know I need to be careful about how I write things. And when I hear her talking about, where you're talking about this Neil Adams Superman cover, yeah, that cover came out about 50 years ago, and kids today don't know what that is. So I know I have to be careful about what I write, and it gets continuously worse with this book as it goes on. I mean, we get these sequences with Scarlet Steel as related to this confrontation and team up with Mighty Mite. Then we go on to her going to a dinner in, I don't know, a mix of a costume and a dress, and it just starts to come out with her talking to this senator. And then we get introduced to the main villain in this Elon Musk type who's going to be coming up soon, along with this other person with powers. And this Elon Musk type guy, again, making references to Elon Musk buying Twitter, and making the references to Elon Musk, it just doesn't really work for me. And what that also doesn't work for me is what happens later on in this book with this Elon Musk type guy with having this robot, and which is supposed to be some sort of sentry of some type. And I don't want to give away too much of this book because even though I do not like this book, I don't want to go out here and take away from the hard work of everybody who put into it. But there's a lot of things that the creators here could have improved on as related to the structure of their story. Because if this is the first issue, you want to leave a strong first impression on the reader. You want to give us a sense of who this character is, what they want, what their mission as a hero is all about. That's what C.B. Zane did in his first issue of Mighty Might that left a strong first impression on me and had me eager to pick up the next book. I got to know Presley. I got to know her friends. I got to know where she lived. I got to know how she got her powers and why she wants to be a hero. But with Scarlet Steel, I don't get to know any of this. I get thrown into action, but I don't get a sense of her mission or what she's about. And I don't get that sense of a mission because they wanted to do this crossover when you could have just wrapped all of that up in the third issue of Mighty Might, having her team up and then getting back to Presley's adventures and then putting a caption saying, hey, if you want to check out Scarlet Steel, you can pick up Scarlet Steel #1, then introduce us to Scarlet Steel, introduce us to her mission, show us what makes her distinct, because the way this book was executed basically doesn't show me anything special about Scarlet Steel. If anything, she comes across as a kind of value version of Supergirl. And as the book goes on and she has to run in with the Elon Musk robot, this book goes from being family friendly like Might was to stepping into far beyond the R zone with the nudity and violence that's just like I Like It, to the triple X zone where I'm really feeling uncomfortable about all of the nudity and the sexual activities that go on later on in the book. And this book's really, it just is really disjointed because you're having a superhero action and adventure. Then we go into the whole nudity and the Penthouse Comics antics later on in the book, which I cannot show you because that would violate YouTube's community guidelines. But this whole book just doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't want to. It concludes, yes, the story between Mighty Might and Horace at the stadium, but after the battle in the stadium, the structure starts to become rickety, and towards the conclusion of the book, it basically winds up falling completely apart because the book tries to do everything except let us get to know who the woman is behind Scarlet Steel, the way we got to know who Presley was before she became the Mighty Might, and how Presley is trying to navigate life as a college student now that she's got those superpowers. That's what made Mighty Might very interesting. But Scarlet Steel is not a character that really was grabbing me from this first minute. She just feels like she's fading into the background of her own book. And that's the problem due to the execution of the concept of this crossover. This crossover was designed to get people to buy that first issue of Scarlet Steel, but due to the execution of concept, I don't think many people will be buying a second book of Scarlet Steel because Scarlet Steel's whole launch was completely tarnished and it has a lot of rust on it because it just hit the air and just had a lot of people sour as related to the moisture that was prevented as related to this character. This character, as she was written, is just not, she's just coming across as very bland, very generic, and doesn't have anything special. And they throw in the, again, sexual activity in the end of the book that really just, it's too graphic, goes too far, and it's just this entire book, it had all the elements there, but the whole thing is execution of concept, and the execution of concept was more focused on grabbing cash instead of trying to give us a good picture of this character and why we should care about her to pick up her next issue. And after reading this book, I don't really want to pick up that next issue because I don't want, while I like my cheesecake, again, I like my cheesecake, but I don't want to see graphic nudity and sex scenes like that in a comic that's like this. No, I don't want to see that stuff at all. No, the editors here really should have taken a chance and taken another look at this story and really focused it on centering on showing us what makes Scarlet Steel special. But when I look at Scarlet Steel, the only thing that I see that's special are on her chest. And sadly, the writers here are more focused on giving us too much sexiness. I mean, yes, I like my heroine sexy, but I want some substance to the story. That's something I try to do in many of my books, like the Isis series, the Steam series, and even books like Eternal Night in the Spinsterella trilogy. However, I understand the audience wants more than jiggle. They want some substance to the jiggle, so that if you have stuff jiggling, it's firm, and they want that story to really flow and work in a way that really develops the character, because I really don't think I learned much about Scarlet Steel. She just feels like a background character in her own story, and that's one of the big problems that a lot of writers have with heroines. But C.B. Zane didn't have it because he knew how to write Presley, and he knew how to write her as a fun, nice person that was out here looking to do good. But I really couldn't get a sense of who Scarlet Steel was in this book, and if I can't get a sense of who you are in the first book, then I definitely don't have an incentive to go out here and pick up the second. Now, if you want to pick up my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that comic on Lulu.com right now, and I'm focusing on trying to get that book to Amazon.com and trying to learn how their whole system works so I can get that book to Amazon soon. So you might be able to get a copy of John Haynes at Death's Door, the comic book version, on Amazon soon. But until then, you can pick up a copy of John Haynes at Death's Door at Lulu.com right now for the same price as the 2022 Kickstarter. And if you want to pick up my first full comic, Esteem No Good Deed, you can find that comic on Kindle right now for 99 cents. And you can see how I write heroines in a sexy and substantive way and use cheesecake effectively, but without making it gratuitous. And you can also get that comic in paperback on the Esteem series book, Esteem Blast from the Past, on Amazon.com and other online booksellers in paperback. And if you want to help me be able to get the first full comic featuring the Goddess Next Door, which will feature some cheesecake but will also feature a very substantive story, you can help me by donating to the PayPal or the Cash App to help me continue to build the funds to help pay an artist to make the next full SJS Direct comic featuring Isis. And that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, Illuminati on Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at Lulu.com today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.